Camp Greenwood, nestled in the heart of these dense woods, was a place of wonder by day and mystery by night. It was home to many campers, a place where friendships were forged, and stories came to life beside the dancing flames of the campfire. Among all these stories, one stood out: the legend of the Dark Ripper. The Dark Ripper, as the story went, was a creature that thrived in the deepest, darkest corners of the forest. An entity of shadows, it moved silently under the cover of darkness. This creature was said to be drawn to the laughter and light of Camp Greenwood, lurking at the very edge of the campfire's glow, waiting for its chance. Jamie, like many others, heard these tales with a mixture of awe and skepticism. "They're just stories to scare us," he'd say dismissively. Yet there were unspoken rules at Camp Greenwood, traditions passed down through the years. Never wander into the woods alone after dark, and always keep the campfire burning bright. One evening, as the fire dwindled and the camp grew quiet, Jamie felt a pull of curiosity, a need to challenge these age-old legends. "Tonight's the night I find out the truth," he whispered to himself. With a mischievous grin, he waited for the right moment and then silently slipped away from the safety of his cabin, venturing into the embrace of the night. The forest at night was a different realm, a symphony of nocturnal whispers and rustling leaves. Jamie moved cautiously, each step taken with a mix of thrill and trepidation. As he ventured deeper, the familiar sights of the camp became distant memories, replaced by the untamed wilderness of the whispering woods. The deeper Jamie went, the more he felt the forest watching him, an unseen audience observing his every move. What had started as an adventure was slowly turning into something more, a journey into the unknown. The night air grew colder, and a sense of unease crept over him. A sudden gust of wind extinguished Jamie's lantern, plunging him into darkness. The night, once alive with the sounds of the forest, fell eerily silent. In that darkness, Jamie realized he was not alone. Something else was there with him, something moving with a purpose. The stories of the Dark Ripper, once just campfire tales, now seemed terrifyingly real. Panic set in. Jamie knew he had to return to the camp, to the light. But in the oppressive darkness, every direction seemed wrong, every tree a lurking menace. Then, a low, ominous growl echoed through the trees, a sound unlike any animal Jamie knew. It was deep, guttural, filled with an otherworldly malice. The growl seemed to surround him, coming from all directions, enveloping him in fear. Heart pounding, Jamie knew he had to act. He ran. He ran as fast as his legs could carry him, branches whipping at his face, roots threatening to trip him. The growl turned into a deafening roar, chasing him through the darkness, a relentless predator in pursuit of its prey. Jamie's breaths came in ragged gasps as he raced through the forest, the oppressive darkness pressing in from all sides. Every snap of a twig underfoot sounded like a gunshot, every rustle of leaves a whispered threat. The forest, once a sanctuary of nature's beauty, had transformed into a labyrinth of terror. The moon, a mere sliver in the sky, offered scant illumination, its pale light struggling to penetrate the dense canopy above. Shadows moved and morphed around Jamie, playing tricks on his mind, creating forms and figures that weren't really there. Or were they? The growl of the Dark Ripper echoed through the woods, a symphony of horror that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It was a sound that seemed to scrape against Jamie's very soul. A primal, guttural noise that spoke of hunger and malice. The trees themselves appeared to come alive, their gnarled branches reaching out like the fingers of a skeletal hand, grasping for Jamie as he passed. The very air felt thick, as if charged with an electric current, a palpable sense of dread that clung to Jamie like a second skin. In his panicked flight, Jamie stumbled upon a clearing, a small oasis of moonlight in the suffocating darkness. For a moment, he paused, gasping for air, his chest heaving with exertion. The clearing, bathed in the ethereal glow of the moon, seemed otherworldly, a realm disconnected from the nightmare he was living. But this respite was short-lived. The growl of the Dark Ripper broke the spell. a reminder that the creature was still in pursuit, relentless in its hunt. Jamie's eyes darted around, searching for an escape, a way back to the safety of the campfire. That's when he saw it. A faint glimmer in the distance, the flickering light of the campfire. Hope surged within him, a beacon calling him back to safety. With renewed energy, Jamie bolted toward the light, his legs pumping, his heart racing. But the forest was not done with him yet. The ground beneath his feet seemed to shift and undulate, roots and vines reaching up to ensnare him. Every step became a battle, a fight against the very earth he tread upon. And then, the unimaginable happened. Jamie's foot caught on a hidden root, sending him sprawling to the ground with a jarring thud. His breath whooshed out of him, and for a moment, he lay there, dazed and disoriented, the forest spinning around him. The growl grew louder, closer, a sound that now filled Jamie's entire world. He scrambled to his feet, desperation giving him strength, but as he turned to run, he froze. There, standing at the edge of the clearing, was the Dark Ripper. The creature was unlike anything Jamie had ever seen, a nightmare made flesh. It stood tall, its body shrouded in darkness, a silhouette of terror. Its eyes glowed like burning embers, full of malevolence and hunger. Its limbs were long and twisted, ending in razor-sharp claws that gleamed in the moonlight. For a moment, Jamie and the creature stood locked in a silent standoff, the prey and the predator. The air was thick with tension, a tangible force that seemed to pulsate between them. Jamie's heart pounded in his chest, a frantic drumbeat of fear. Then, with a speed that belied its size, the Dark Ripper lunged. Jamie turned and ran, every fiber of his being screaming in terror. The creature was right behind him, its breath hot on his neck, its claws mere inches from his back. The campfire was close now, its light a promise of safety. Jamie could see the flickering flames, could almost feel their warmth. He pushed his body to its limits, every muscle burning with exertion. With one final burst of speed, Jamie broke through the tree line, stumbling into the clearing where the campfire burned. He collapsed beside the fire, his body shaking, his mind reeling from the horror he had just escaped. But as he looked around, a new terror gripped him. The camp was deserted, the cabins empty, the usual sounds of laughter and chatter eerily absent. The fire, once a symbol of safety and community, now burned alone in the night. Jamie realized then that he was truly alone, isolated in a sea of darkness, with only the fire to keep the shadows at bay. The growl of the Dark Ripper echoed in the distance, a reminder that the creature was still out there, waiting, watching. Jamie sat trembling by the dying fire, the eerie silence of the camp pressing down on him like a physical weight. The flickering flames cast long, dancing shadows, turning each rustle of leaves and snap of twigs into a potential harbinger of doom. Jamie's mind raced with fear and confusion. Where had everyone gone? Why was the camp abandoned? As these questions swirled in his head, a sudden movement at the edge of the clearing caught his eye. There, lurking in the shadows, was the Dark Ripper. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and it seemed to be studying Jamie, contemplating its next move. Jamie knew he couldn't stay by the fire. It was only a matter of time before the creature decided to strike. Mustering all his courage, he slowly stood up, keeping his eyes fixed on the shadowy figure. He began to edge towards the nearest cabin, hoping to find some means of protection or a place to hide. But the creature was quicker. In a blur of motion, it lunged forward, emerging from the shadows like a nightmare come to life. Jamie turned and ran, but it was no use. The Dark Ripper was upon him in seconds, its claws reaching out with deadly intent. Just as Jamie felt the creature's breath on his neck, he felt the clawed hand wrap around him, yanking him backwards into the dark woods, never to be heard from again. "And that," said the camp counselor, a sly grin on his face, "is the legend of the Dark Ripper, a tale to remind us all to stick together and respect the rules of Camp Greenwood." He chuckled, pleased with himself for telling such a spine-tingling story. The children around the fire were wide-eyed, some clinging to each other, the fear palpable in the air. "But don't worry, it's just a story," the counselor reassured them, his voice full of mirth. There's nothing in these woods that can harm you as long as you stay within the light of the campfire. The children began to relax, their tension easing as they started to chatter among themselves, the tale of the Dark Ripper already turning into a camp legend they would share in hushed tones. The counselor stood up, brushing off his pants, ready to announce it was time for bed. But before he could speak, a sudden cold breeze swept through the campsite, causing the fire to flicker and dim. In that moment of near darkness, something reached out from the shadows. It was quick, so quick that no one had time to react. A clawed hand, not unlike the one described in the counselor's story, wrapped around his ankle. The children screamed as the counselor was yanked off his feet and dragged into the darkness beyond the fire's light. His cries for help were quickly silenced, leaving only the crackling of the fire and the terrified gasps of the campers. And then, as suddenly as it had happened, the night was quiet once more. The fire, now the only source of light in the dark forest, seemed smaller, its glow barely keeping the surrounding darkness at bay. The children huddled together, too scared to move, too shocked to speak. The legend of the Dark Ripper was no longer just a story. It was real, and it had claimed one of their own. In the whispering woods of Camp Greenwood, the fire burned on, while unseen eyes watched from the darkness.